You're going to open the folder for Thursday, September 3rd. Okay, and once you guys are there, I want you to go ahead and start answering the bell ringer. And I'm going to go ahead and go into my screen sharing so we can look at this together. So can everybody see my screen at this point? My Schoology for first period and today's date? And you can just send me a message in the chat. Okay, great, thank you. So here's today's bell ringer, so go ahead and click on that. So which of these are you most interested in learning about? Provide an example of a subtopic, so briefly explain why. And I've given you kind of an example. So let's say you said, okay, I'm really interested in learning about chemistry, specifically organic chemistry. You can, well, what does that mean and why? I am most interested in learning about organic chemistry because it helps biologists understand living things. So just give me an idea of what you guys are kind of interested in this school year, especially this first quarter. Some of you say chemistry because there's experiments that we can do. And I'll have to kind of refresh as some of these pop up. Okay, so make sure you're working on your bell ringer right now. And most of the students so far have said that chemistry is kind of exciting and it's fun to mix things together. Okay, kind of see what happens and look at chemical reactions and things like that. All right, so I'll give you another moment to answer that bell ringer on your own page there. Okay, and I'm going to come back. All right, so after you've answered your bell ringer, what I want you guys to do is below the bell ringer, you will see there is a link. It says virtual notebook assignments. Right now, that's just a description of what we're going to be doing. So today I want to show you our virtual notebook that we're going to be working in periodically throughout the school year, okay? Notebooking, I think, is important. I know some students don't like that, but if you actually go on to do any chemistry in a chemistry lab or even beyond, let's say, after high school, you decide you want to go into chemistry or biology or something like that, you will have a lab notebook. I told you guys I minored in chemistry when I was an undergrad, and every single chemistry class, you have to have a notebook where you write down step by step every single experiment that you do. And that's actually how part of your grade is generated. So understanding notebook keeping for science is extremely important because it's actually what biologists, scientists, researchers actually do. They have notebooks in their labs. All right, so I know some students, like I said, notebooking, blah, blah, but that's actually how scientists keep their procedures written down, and they keep notes and things like that. All right, so what I want you to do to show you where the virtual notebook is, you need to go back to first quarter blue schedule. Okay, so go back into first quarter blue schedule. And below course syllabus, you will see interactive science notebook. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is go back to, again, click on quarter one blue schedule. You'll see the welcome page pop up, then scroll down, you'll see course syllabus, and below that, there is an interactive science notebook Q1. I want you to click on that. If you're having issues finding that, send me a message in the chat, and I'll share my screen with you guys in just a moment. Okay. So once you have that, I want you to click on the interactive science notebook. And there's a little bit of a description about it, and it says to view, and I'll tell you how to view videos and things like that, but I want you guys to scroll down and then click on Miss Littlepage 8th grade virtual notebook. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys again, just so I can show you how to get there, okay? We'll go back to share web browser, and I'm going to show you guys in case you got lost or if I was going too fast. So again, you're going to be, okay, so you should see my screen now. So welcome page, you go to first quarter blue schedule. You'll see welcome page, scroll down, course syllabus. Below that, interactive science notebook Q1. Click on that. Then you'll see the interactive science notebook, again, open up as an assignment. Click on it. Then you guys are going to scroll down. There are some instructions here, but I'm going to go through that with you. These are just some reminders for when you log back in later on. But you're going to click on this right here. And what should open up is this particular document. So I want everybody to make sure that you can open that. If for some reason you're not able to open that, I need you to let me know. Okay, so some people say that they don't have the link. Okay, so let's see. If you don't have the link, then put your name in. Just again, we'll come back into it later on. It should be linked to the class. So how many of you are able to see the link and able to open the notebook? I'm not sure why half of you can open it and half of you can't. Okay, so someone just posted that they went to my document. So I'm going to go back out and stop sharing. Okay, so some of you, for example, you clicked on my document. So if you were able to click on my document, let's see, somebody posted, I guess it was Kylie Reed. If you can post in the chat, because again, my screen looks a little bit different than the student screen. If you can post in the chat how you got to my document, that'd be very helpful, because I think that may help some of the other students. Okay, so Darcy, you can put in the chat, were you able to access it? Okay, great. So yeah, anybody else who's having trouble accessing it, look in the chat for some tips, okay? Again, this is a kind of learning curve for all of us because it still looks different on my screen as the instructor than it does to you all as a student. So again, if you were able to click on my document to access it, can you put that in the chat so some students who may be having issues could kind of follow those steps? Okay, so some people say you can open it as a document, but I can't type in it. Okay, so it's under the title next to the assignment button. So if you're having, and thank you, Kylie. So if you're having issues with that, try that. Okay, so if you are having problems typing in it, it may just be how it's opened up and how you're looking at it. Okay, so give me just a minute and we'll come back to that. Okay. All right, so if we're still having issues, we're going to work through that, but I'm going to go ahead and move on for those of you who were able to access it and able to open it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my screen sharing and I'm going to walk you kind of through the notebook. Okay. I'm going to go back to sharing my browser here. Okay, so remember, this is how you got to the notebook. And when you click on it, it should look something similar to this. Okay. What you're going to be able to do is you are going to be able to edit the notebook. So when you get time, you'll be able to put your name in here. Okay, so you'll be able to click on it. Okay, and then you can kind of keep going down. So what I'm going to be doing is, as I update the notebook in my Google Drive, it will update it for you as a student. So through this notebook, we have activities and things embedded. Please remember, I will assign the pages. Do not work ahead. You guys are going to have more than enough work and activities to do without working ahead. Do not work ahead in any of your classes unless your teacher tells you to do so. For my class, do not work ahead. So for you to edit it, you're going to be in this mode right here. Okay. So you'll be able to click in the boxes. You'll be able to type stuff in here. Okay, but there's also videos and links to Nearpods and other activities that I'm going to have you do on your own time. Okay, so some of this will be student-led activities. In order for you to access the videos or things like that, you're going to have to go to View and the Present mode, similar to the Google Slides activity I assigned. So once you're in the Present mode, and I'm going to scroll back, you'll see the notebook and you'll be able to click down here from slide to slide. Now you cannot edit in this mode. You can only view information, videos, links, etc. All right. So one of your first assignments that you guys are going to eventually do is you are going to watch a lab safety video and then answer a few questions here in your science notebook. Okay. And so you will, when it comes time, we're not going to do it right now, just give me a moment and then we'll get started. You'll click on this link here, you'll watch the video, and then you're going to answer questions here in your notebook. Okay, so you'll be able to watch the video in this view, then you're going to exit out. Then you will be able to click into the boxes and record your responses. Okay, so we will do some activities in this notebook and then some we won't. Okay, so and then one of the next things we're going to get to today will be the scientific method. And you'll have a little bit of vocabulary activity to do. So I'm going to come back out and stop screen sharing. All right. So have most of you been able to access the digital notebook? Okay, and look, I think everybody has been able to do that. Okay, so what I want you guys to do now is, so you can kind of take a break from listening to me talking at you all class period, is I'm going to let you guys open up your digital notebooks. Okay, I'm gonna, and I'll still be available for chat. I'm just gonna turn my mic off and I'm gonna turn my camera off. I'm gonna give you guys a few minutes to open up your notebook, go ahead and type your name in there. And then I want you to watch the video clip that's embedded in your notebook and then answer those first few questions on the page. Okay, so that's kind of part of our assignment for today. So I'm gonna pause my video, and you guys go ahead and get started, and you should be able to get that done in about, 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, so go ahead and get started on that. Again, you're going to put your name in your notebook and you're going to watch the video and answer those few questions. So if you don't have the link, I want you to try following the steps that someone posted earlier. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'll try to copy and paste that to you. All right, if you're able to access it, go ahead and get started, and I'll be available through the chat. All right, so hopefully some of you guys are finishing up. So if you have finished the notebook activity, you can just put a comment in the thread here so I can get an idea of how many people have finished. If you are having issues, don't panic. I will help you. We will get through this together. So don't worry about it. You will have time to complete it and I'll help you. If you are done, you can just type done in the chat, please. Okay, so I'm getting a lot of questions about what we're doing right now. So I'm going to go back to my screen share and show you. If you are having problems with the notebook, hang tight, okay? We will get this figured out. Let me go back into the notebook and show you guys again. If you've already done it and you've already submitted, then you're fine, okay? For those of you having questions, let me show you again. I know this is the first day. Once we get accustomed to this, okay, we'll be able to get things done a little bit more quickly. So let me show those of you who are just now rejoining. Let me go back to my page and I'm going to show you. So let me get ready to screen share. Okay, so everyone at this point should see our Schoology page, section, first period, first quarter blue schedule. Scroll down, interactive science notebook. I didn't put it in the weeks because sometimes we'll be referring back to this throughout the first couple of weeks, okay? So it's in its own folder. So you're gonna click on it. So again, if you're just joining us or you had to step out or something like that, this is what we're working on. Click on the interactive science notebook, okay? Again, yours may look slightly different. And I've had some students who've been very helpful with different suggestions on how to access it. So if yours doesn't look just like this, then we'll go back to the student chat and find some of those suggestions. Because again, my screen looks slightly different than some of yours since I'm in a teacher mode. But when you click on this or you open the notebook, it'll look something similar to this. Some of you were saying you couldn't find a view or edit mode. Again, I will come back to you. So in this top right here, it's File, Edit, View. In order for you to watch videos that I have embedded and selected for you, you should be able to click View and go to Present Mode. You cannot edit in this mode. You have to be in the view, you have to be in a different mode. This is for viewing the videos only. So you'll scroll through, and when you go back into edit mode, you'll put your name right here. And this is just kind of a table of contents. So later on, you can go back and add page 4 here, and you can put lab safety so you know what page is what. Then you will watch the video that's embedded here. So someone asked me about crash course video. This is the video you're supposed to be watching, okay? You should be watching the general lab safety video by the Amoeba Sisters that is embedded directly into the digital notebook. Once you watch this video, and I see some of you are messaging me, let me finish on this section and then I'll get back to you, okay? You're gonna click on this video and you're gonna watch it. Once you have finished that, you're gonna exit out of this present mode, and then you can click on the activity. It says study the image above, list 3 things that are wrong and how to correct them. List 3 things that students are doing right. So you'll look at this little image here based off the description you just or the activity you just listened to in lab safety. You should be able to answer these questions. And I know it says how to correct them. You can just make brief statements, okay? These don't have to be long, complete sentences, okay? Just kind of a bulleted format. Once you finish with that, hold tight, and then we're gonna move on, okay? So I'm gonna go back into the video, the WebEx, okay? But I wanted to show you guys, some of you have joined us a little later than others or had to step out. So here we go. We're going to come back. All right, so can everyone see me again, hopefully? All right, so again, if you are done, go ahead and put done in the chat here. I see a few of you have finished the activity. And some of you are saying you don't have any top buttons. So again, if you're having problems, we will finish in time and I can help you individually in the WebEx, okay? So we have more than enough time. All right, so again, if you have finished, please type done into the chat. If you're having issues, don't worry, I will help you. This is just for anyone else who has finished the activity. And as you type and modify the notebook, it actually shows up in my Schoology. So I can go to that assignment, open it up, and I can actually see what you guys have submitted, okay? So I'm gonna turn my camera off for just a minute here, give you guys just another minute, and then we're gonna move on. Okay. So now that we've done a little bit about lab safety, and we will be doing some review because eventually you will have a quiz next week, and I will make sure that we review and prepare for that. But one of your first minor grades is going to be a lab safety review quiz. Okay, so that will be scheduled for next week. So make sure that you feel confident, that you understand lab safety, things like that. I do have review activities, of course, for us to do next week, but your first minor grade will be a lab safety quiz. Another thing that I'm going to need you to submit, which some of you already have, is there is a lab safety document in the folder for today that you will type your name in and your parents will type their name in, and you will submit that to me. Okay, so it's basically a lab safety contract. It says a signature, but obviously, you know, I don't expect everybody to print it out and sign it and send it back, but you're going to type your name in it. Okay, and that shows that we have gone through lab safety. We've discussed lab safety, and you kind of have an idea of what is appropriate and what's not. And of course, if we come back to school together, we're going to go back over it before we have labs anyway, just to make sure that we all know what we're doing and we're being safe. All right. So again, that's our lab safety activity for today. We will do some review, but your first minor quiz will be on lab safety. So we'll have some another review on that next week. Okay, so the next information we're going to cover today is a little bit on the scientific method. I know it's not, you know, the most fun thing to cover, but it's important that you review those steps. Any good scientist, you have to go through those steps, those procedures to make sure that the data you collect is useful and important. So what I'm going to have you guys do is there's actually a link that's in the science notebook to a PowerPoint on the scientific method, but I'm going to go through that with you as a class. Okay. So I'm going to pull that up for you guys, but if you want to go back and review it and to have some assistance when you do a little bit of an activity in your digital notebook, you will have access to it, okay? But I'm going to go through that with you now as a group. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen with you. Okay. So in our week 1, again, we're in Thursday, September 3rd. This is the lab safety contract. So when it comes time for that, you guys can click on that and answer those questions. And if you want to know kind of what we're doing today in the virtual lab notebook, this is kind of what we're working on. And I'm walking you through that right now. But we did lab safety video, you did the safe and unsafe behavior, and now we're going to be reviewing our scientific method PowerPoint. Okay, and then we actually have a Nearpod that I'm going to let you guys go through. Okay, so you'll go back to your interactive notebook. And again, if we're having problems with that, that's okay. I'm going to help you guys through that. We're going to open it up. We're going to move down to what is page 5 or slide 5. So if you go into present mode, you'll see that there's some links here. So this is going to be a Nearpod link. And over here, you're going to click on the magnifying glass, and we're going to talk a little bit about the scientific method, but I'm actually going to go through that with you guys right now. So if you click on that, it will open up a copy of the scientific method. Just a little PowerPoint, very kind of short and condensed for you guys. So I'm going to go into present mode. So at this point, can everyone see the scientific method PowerPoint that I'm presenting through my screen? Okay, great. And if you want to go back and use this as a resource, it is linked and embedded into your science notebook. All right, so scientific method. Remember, what is science? And that's science is a way of learning about the natural world. Okay. If you're curious about anything and you set up an experiment or a way to observe different things, then you're basically doing science. And the scientific method is a step-by-step process. It has to be step-by-step so that you know the data that you get and the information that you get is reliable and useful. Okay, you have to go through a rigid process to make sure that, again, it's useful information. So basically, how do we start, right? Well, pose a question, do your research, form your hypothesis, then you formulate some type of an experiment, and then you would analyze your results and draw a conclusion. If your hypothesis is true, then you would report those results. If your hypothesis is false, then you may think again. And one thing students always assume is that if your hypothesis is false, you did something wrong. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Okay, that's the whole reason why it is a method. You test, test, and retest. And if the same hypothesis is proven true time and time and time again, then that's when we get into what we consider to be scientific laws or scientific fact. Okay. So again, these are just kind of those steps in reviewing with you guys. I know you kind of done this every year, but it's always nice to have a review. So you have the problem, observation, form a hypothesis as an if-then statement, do your experiment, collect, and then form some type of conclusion. So remember, you're going to develop a question about some type of problem or something that you've observed or something you're curious about. Or my slide moved ahead too quickly. Then you're going to make your observation and you're going to do some type of research. So let's say you're wanting to study animal behavior. You want to look at the impact of boat horns on dolphin activity in Mobile Bay. Okay, there's a lot of activity in Mobile Bay, people driving their boats, right? Or so let's say you want to know how people blaring their horns on their boats affect dolphin activity. That could be a statement or a question. And then you would observe. So you would basically go out in the bay and you would observe what dolphins are doing in response to people blasting their horns. Okay. And then you would formulate some type of hypothesis. You would make an if-then statement about, what you think the impact of the sound of horns is doing to dolphin behavior. And then you would test that through some type of an experiment or some type of an investigation. And you would follow through the steps that you formulated. And again, the outcome must be measurable. So even if we were looking at the example of dolphin activity, you would have to figure out some way to measure it. Maybe you want to look at how quickly they swim away or how deep they swim in response to boat sounds. So you have to actually have a physical measurement. You have to be recording some type of data. And then once you've collected it, you would analyze it. So you would look at your data and say, okay, if you're doing the dolphin example, how was their behavior affected? Did they dive really deep in response to boat horns? Did they stay at the surface? And maybe not boat horns per se, but there's a lot of research that is being done on the impact of submarines and other sounds through shipping channels and how those affect whales and other marine mammals that communicate through sonar. Okay, so anytime sonar is being used in the water, it can actually affect the communication between certain species of whale depending on how deep they are in the water. So that is actual research that is going on. And again, you would organize your research, data, tables, charts, graphs, and then you would form some kind of conclusion. And that conclusion would either support or reject your hypothesis. Okay, so how do we get to what's called scientific theory? And that's basically an attempt to explain a pattern observed repeatedly. So sometimes in just generalized conversation, people use the word theory quite a bit, but in scientific theory, it is based off of the same research, getting the same results over and over and over and over and over again. That's how we get to scientific theory. It is basically the best explanation we have so far. And of course, theories can change. Some of the theories that scientists and biologists viewed 200 years ago aren't necessarily the same as they are now. Okay, because experiments continue to be performed and we continue to learn. And as we, I mean scientists. I consider myself to be a scientist. I've done research in the past. And so theories can continually change with new data and new information. Okay, a rule that describes a pattern in nature is called a scientific law. So if an observation is considered a law, it must be observed repeatedly. For example, you hold an apple up in the air and you drop it on Earth, what happens? It always falls to the ground. So the law of gravity, okay? Every time you hold something and drop it, it's going to fall. However, laws can be slightly flexible because there can be exceptions and they can be proven wrong potentially over time. So just remember that nothing, in science is always hard hard, true, and fast. It doesn't have to stay the same all the time. All right. So I just gave you guys some examples of laws, some things we're going to talk about. Newton's laws of motion, conservation of mass, conservation of energy, and the law of gravity. All of these things are laws we're going to be discussing and talking about in physical science. Last thing we're going to talk about real quickly is going to be variables. And so this is when you actually are recording your data. Variables are independent versus dependent. And anytime you have an experiment, you always have a control. So remember, that's the part of the experiment that does not change. It is always constant. Variables are what can be changed in an experiment. So the independent variable is the one that can be changed or manipulated. Okay, so let's say you want to look at the impact of water on plant growth. Okay, then the volume of water that you were using would be considered the independent variable because that's what you're changing. You would still have the same species of plants, you would have the same soil, same amount of sunlight, but you would change the volume of water. That's the independent variable. Okay, the dependent variable is kind of basically what you're being observed. So in the plant example, you'd be observing plant growth. You want to see how much the plant grows in response to differing amounts of water. And so the dependent variable changes as a result of the independent variable. Okay, and here's just another little comparison. The independent is what you're manipulating. You control it, the volume of water, for example. Okay, and then the dependent is what you leave alone and what you're measuring. Here's a nice little example for you guys for dependent versus independent variable. So this is looking at the relationship between stress, right? Students always say, oh, I'm stressing out. I've got too much work to do. There's too much going on. You know, or I'm stressing out about my personal life. My friend's mad at me, or we're not talking anymore. My boyfriend broke up with me, something like that, right? So students always say they have a lot of stress. And so this is an example of seeing if there's a relationship between stress and whether or not you will get sick. So in this example, the x-axis is what we consider the independent variable, and that is stress, or stress that's being reported by the student. And in the y-axis is the dependent variable, and that's basically the percentage of students who report that they developed colds in response to their stress and anxiety. Okay, so this is just kind of an example for you guys to use. Okay. So that's it for our scientific method, and I'm going to come back to you guys. All right. So do you guys have any questions about the scientific method? How many of you feel like you could distinguish between dependent versus dependent variable? And you can just put that in the chat right now. Some say, me, I got this, I can do it. Okay. So what I want you guys to think about right now, and I know we're kind of doing this through our chat together, but I want you to take just a moment, just a minute, think about it. See if you can come up with an example of an experiment. You don't have to type out long experiment, but I just want you to sit and think for just a minute and give an example of an independent versus dependent variable. See if you guys can do that. And you can just put that in the chat, okay? I'll give you guys just a minute. See if you can come up with something. Jot it down on a piece of paper, look at it for a minute, and then post it to the chat. Okay, so again, off the top of my head, I thought about 2 examples, right? You could be looking at dolphin behavior. That's a little bit more difficult to think of the independent versus dependent variable because it's what we call a field study, right? But you would still be recording dolphin behavior. So that would be your dependent variable, right? The one you're recording. So somebody said, does different soil affect plants? That's a great example. So if we did that, you have to think about it. What would be dependent versus independent? Well, whatever you're manipulating, right, is your independent variable. Wow, that's a good one. Test scores affected by the amount of sleep you have. There's a lot of studies that have looked at the impacts of how sleep deprivation can affect behavior. And that's a great example right there. Can anybody else come up with an example? And I'll give you just a minute to kind of think about that. Which oil brand makes a car run smoother? That's another good example. You could be comparing the different types of synthetic oils, right? There's grades of oils, right? There's differences between them. Anybody else want to share one more example? So whenever you come up with these, try to think about the difference between independent and dependent variable. And it's not always easy. It can be a little confusing sometimes, but these are all really good examples. So hopefully you guys are kind of thinking at this point. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through the scientific method together, there is another activity in your science notebook. And again, if you've had problems with that, I will have time to help you at the end of class. Okay, so what I have for you now is in your science notebook, there are a few definitions. And I know in my survey that I gave you guys on the first day, you don't like a lot of definitions. I understand that. But this is just a real quick one. Okay, a real quick activity. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. Ooh, brand names of light bulb. Which one will burn longer? Bargain, brand name, or bargain brand? That's a great example too. Okay, so you'd be comparing two different types of light bulbs. Okay. So let's go back to our screen sharing real quick. And I'm going to share my web browser with you and show you the notebook again. Okay, so I see some of you still having problems. That's not an issue. I will come back and I will help you find those links. Okay, there has to be a reason why, because it looks like most of the class can get it. So I'm going to go ahead, but I will help those of you who are having problems. So for those of you that are able to access this, okay, you've looked at the PowerPoint. Now remember, you can click on the magnifying glass and you can download the PowerPoint, you can view it. You know, if you want to save it to your desktop, you can do that, or to your drive, you can do that. Thank you, Carter, for giving some suggestions. So you guys, you know, if you think you can help a fellow student out, that's wonderful. Please do. For those of you that can access this, go to your science notebook, and then once you feel like you can answer these questions, you're just going to go through, and not really questions, vocabulary, very brief in your own words, because that's kind of a key thing. I can sit here all day and we can talk and you can read and you can go through these things, but you need to come up with a description in your mind. Okay, what helps you to distinguish between these? Okay, so take a few minutes to go through that. Okay, once you have finished that, then there is a link for a Nearpod for you guys to do. Okay, so you can click on the link here in your science notebook. If it asks you for a code, I've given it to you because it's a student-paced Nearpod. So that's your next activity. Okay, you are going to go into your notebook. You're going to answer the vocabulary. Then I want you guys to go through the scientific method Nearpod. Okay, and again, that is student-paced. So you will click the link, it will open a Nearpod, and I've given you the code there. So for those of you that can open the notebook and you're ready to go, you can go ahead and get started on that. And then I'm going to go back into the chat and I'm going to help those students who need some assistance. But you should be able to do your vocabulary terms and your Nearpod. And let's say it should take you about 10 minutes. So if you can open it, go ahead and get started now. And I'm going to go back to the chat and help those of you who still need some access, need assistance. Okay, so again, for those of you that are having some issues, this is a great suggestion, and a lot of students have been able to access materials by going to My Document, okay? And if you are still having problems, I can post the Nearpod link into the chat. So here's what I'm going to do. If you still have issues with the science notebook, just so you guys are still kind of on pace with us, I'm going to go in and copy and paste the Nearpod link into the chat, okay? And the code, and it should still work for you. Give me just a moment, and I'm going to do that for any of you students that are having issues right now. Let's see. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. And then I'm going to give you the code. This is for those of you who are having issues, and I'll put the code in. All right, we'll go back to the chat. Sure I have that right. So again, if you've been having issues with your lab notebook, you can click on the link to open the Nearpod, and there's your code to type in, and you can go ahead and begin your student pace Nearpod. So I'm going to go ahead and mute my mic and the camera, but I will be available through the chat. All right, so it looks like mostly everyone has finished the Nearpod. I know there's a little quiz at the bottom of the article, but you do not need to do that one, okay? And again, if you had issues accessing the digital notebook, you guys can get the link out of the chat here and at least do the Nearpod. So we'll have few minutes at the end of class to kind of hang on with you guys because we have until 9:34 for first period. So I will be able to stay and help those of you who still need it, okay? So kind of the last thing that I'm going to go over with you guys, which most students say, blah, I don't like to do, but that is metric conversions. And I have an activity next week we're going to do that hopefully illustrates why it is so useful that you understand metric conversions and metric units. All right. So I do have a document posted on our Schoology page. So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you guys that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pull up first period. Again, we're in blue schedule today, week 1, and for Thursday. So we've basically done everything that we needed to get done. It looks like everyone's answered the bell ringer. That's great. If you've been joining late, please answer your bell ringer. That's participation credit every day. So you should start logging in to first period and answering the bell ringer right away for each day, okay? There will be one for every time you meet with me. We've gone through the virtual notebook. I'll assist those who need it, okay? So this is kind of a list of your assignments for the day that we were supposed to get through. So again, the safety video, the safety activity, scientific method PowerPoint, the Nearpod, and then that kind of vocabulary terms in your notebook, which you can do at the end of class if you need to after we're done with the WebEx meeting. Don't forget about your lab safety contract. And at the very bottom, you guys will see a metric conversion worksheet. So you're going to click on that metric conversion worksheet. And I've uploaded this as a document. So even if you have had issues with syncing to Google Drive, you shouldn't have an issue with this because it is basically a Word document, okay? I'm going to open it up and kind of go through it with you guys for just a minute, okay? And if you're joining me late, most of the class is done with the Nearpod, so that's why we're going to go ahead and move on, but I can get everybody caught up, okay? So those of you that are done with Nearpod, let's go ahead and move on. So for our metric conversion worksheet, you're going to click on that and it's going to download. If you look at the instructions, it does tell you after you have watched the metric system conversion in your digital notebook. This is kind of a supplemental assistance. So in your digital notebook on page 5, there is a video embedded for kind of just a little video explaining the metric system. Okay, so you guys can log in later, or once we're done with our group meeting here, you guys can open up your notebook and watch that video. Again, it's just kind of supplemental help, another way of looking at it. The first page is practice/homework. The second 2 pages are the ones that I'm going to expect you guys to do and submit. So I'm going to get you started working on that today. And then we're going to come back and discuss it and go back through it if we need to next week. So let's go through it together and we'll talk a little bit about it. and then I will be available to help you, and we're going to review and go back through it next week. So if you feel like you're struggling with conversions, don't freak out. We're going to work through this together. So let's take a look at this metric conversion worksheet. It's going to open up as a document for you guys. So what you can do is when you download it, you can save it to your device or save it to your drive. All right, and you will click on edit. So that way you can scroll down, you can look at it, and you can look at all the information, okay? So this is a great way and a great tool to use for metric conversion. This is called the stair-step method. So basically, we always have what's called a base unit. Base units are grams, liters, and meters. So remember, grams is for mass. And if you guys want to take notes on your paper while we go through this, you can do that. Or you can type onto the document, whatever you prefer to do. So grams is going to be recording mass. Some of you may say, hey, why don't we talk about weight? Well, we're going to learn that there's a difference between weight and mass. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about that later on when we get into physics. So probably somewhere around second or third quarter, there is a difference between weight and mass. Okay. And just out of curiosity, if you want to type in the chat, does anybody right now know what the difference between mass and weight is? I just want to see what your thoughts are. Does anyone know what the difference between weight and mass is? You don't have to respond if you don't know, because that's okay. You might not have learned that yet, but some of you may already know. So that's going to come in our learning somewhere around probably third quarter, maybe. All right, so somebody says it's weight based off size. No, but that's a good guess. The mass is the amount of matter something contains. That's right for mass, but what is weight? So think about that. And you guys may look that up later and see if you can find the answer. And so if you find the answer, doing some research, we'll come back to that on Tuesday when we come back together as a class, okay? But just something for you guys to kind of think about. So typically in labs, we record in weight is the force of gravity on an object. Somebody got it. All right, so if you saw that post that just went into our thread, that is exactly right. We're going to learn about forces in physics. And so weight includes the force of gravity and mass together. And there's a little equation we're going to learn, okay? But one thing I want you guys to understand, a lot of you say chemistry, lab. Well, you need to know how to measure things. You need to know how to record things. And in the lab, we use milligrams or grams when we are measuring out things for chemical experiments and for chemical reactions. And you have to be careful when you're measuring, because if you have too much or too little, something could go wrong, right? So that's why it's important to do metric and unit conversions. And if any of you, I know you guys have 8th grade and another 4 years of high school left, but if you decide to go on to an undergraduate program and you're going into any type of lab, biology, chemistry, physics, you have got to know how to do unit conversions. Because once you get there, they expect you to be able to do it. So if you know you eventually have future plans, and even those of you who maybe go into, if you go into more manual labor, let's say you go into shipbuilding or you go into carpentry or things like that, you need to know how to take measurements. You need to know how to do conversions. Okay, so those are just some examples of why it's important. So metric system based on multiples of 10. Okay, so we are always, this is kind of our base unit here. Grams, liters, meters. This stair-step method is the easiest way to do this, okay? So depending on which direction you go, you're either going to go up the stairs or down the stairs. And all of these prefixes are explained here, right? Kilo means 1,000 times, hecto means 100 times. I don't want you guys to get too hung up on this, okay? So you see these portions where I'm highlighting in gray, don't get too hung up on that. The biggest thing for you to understand and for you to be able to do this pretty simply and quickly is to understand the stair-step method. So how do you use the stairs? I'm going to scroll down and tell you how. Okay, to use the stair-step method, you're going to find the prefix of what you're starting with. And you're either going to go up the stairs to the next unit or down the stairs to the next unit. So depending on where you start and what unit you are, that will depend on the direction your decimal moves. So you don't even have to pull out a calculator to do this. It's all about moving that decimal, okay? So if you go up the stairs, up, means left. If you go up the stairs, your decimal goes to the left. If you go down the stairs, your decimal goes to the right. That's how you know which direction. And all that's explained in that paragraph right there, but you guys can all read. There's no point in me reading that to you. So again, if you want to make a note of that, if you go up the stairs, goes to the left. And if you go down the stairs, it goes to the right. And then you're basically moving your decimal. Okay, so here's what I want you guys to do. Again, you can download this, you can type into it. If you want to write it out on a separate sheet of paper, you have some flexibility in how you submit this assignment to me. Okay, so what I want you guys to do, everybody as a class, come together and we're going to do a couple of practice ones. Okay, so let's walk through A here. Okay, so 5 dm is equal to how many meters? So what is dm? Well, that is decameters, or decimeters, excuse me, decimeters. Okay, so you can look right here, and I misspoke. Here's your prefixes. K means kilo, H is hecto, DK is deca, D is decimeters, C centimeters, and M millimeters, or M or milli, okay? And then you basically combine that with your base unit. So you can have milligrams, milliliters, millimeters, etc. Okay, so.
Oh.
Okay, so you guys need to stay on mute. I don't know who's coming in, okay, but please make sure that you stay on mute, okay? All right, so back to our activity here. I want everybody to practice this one right here. So here's deci, 5 decimeters. And we need to convert to meters. So M is at the middle of our staircase. So basically we're going to be going from here to here. So we go up 1 step. And we are going up the steps. So that means that our decimal is going to go to the left. So basically you're going to write the number 5 down and then move your decimal to the left. So what I want you guys to do now is type in the chat what the answer to that should be. And you can send it privately if you're worried about being wrong and you don't want to be embarrassed, that's fine. But that way I kind of know where we are. So I want to see what you guys come up with.
Girl.
We'll give you just a minute to work on that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So hopefully everyone can still see, and you should have that document pulled up in front of you. Okay. All right, so in the chat, give me a response from someone. You can send it privately if you're too nervous about everybody seeing it. And one person has the correct answer. Yes, that is correct. And I'm going to wait and give a couple more people time to respond. So remember, your decimal is going to go to the left. Left. So I see a couple more responses coming in. Okay, so the answer to that one is going to be 0.5. Okay, so what I want you to do is take a look again, and I'm just going to hold up this sheet of paper real quick, right? We're just going to kind of do it old school. So remember, this is what we have here, right? If everybody can see it backwards, you have 5 decimeters. So when you move your decimal, you're going to go to the left. Okay, so 5, remember your decimal is right here. Let me write that bigger so you guys can see it. 5, okay, and it's right here. So you're going to go this direction. You're going to go towards the left of the number when you're looking at it on your paper. So the answer to that is 0.5. All right. So why don't you guys try to do the next one? Again, this is practice. We're getting familiar with this. We're getting to know this. We're learning about these units. So what I want you guys to do is do the second problem. All right. So you should be looking at B, which is 4 mils is equal to how many liters? So go ahead and take just a minute to try that one. So remember, use your stair-stepping guide. Find mils, which is milli. Milliliters should be, and I'll tell you, it's at the very, very bottom. Milliliters, then you're moving up to the base unit, which is liters. So you should start on milli, and then you're going to move up. Okay, so someone says the document's not opening up. It should be able to open. If not, we'll come back together and try to help you guys, okay? So I want you guys to try one more problem. Try to convert 4 mils to liters. Not sure why some of you guys are having problems. Did you go to the My Document section? And you should be able to click on it. It should open right up, or download it. You should click. It should pop up at the bottom of your screen. Then you click on it. It should open up, and you should be able to hit edit. If it's not opening, just hang tight, okay? We'll finish up in just a minute, and you guys will have time. For those of you that are able to access it, okay, if you're able to access it, go ahead and try to work out B, which is 4 mils converted to liters. And you don't have, so somebody says, do I have to type in it? You don't, if you can do the work on your own paper, that's fine, okay? If later on for the last 2 pages, you can upload an image to me, okay? Submit it that way. I think I have the option for you to submit an attachment, so you can do the work on your own paper and submit it that way. That's not a problem, okay? I will try to go back in and I set it so you can edit, but again, this is still a learning curve for us, okay? So if you would like to do this work on your own paper, that is fine. I will accept that, okay? All right, so one more, somebody give me an answer. See if you can do letter B. Again, send me in a private chat if you want. And someone has gotten, okay, so that one was to everyone. Yes, that is correct. So 0.004 liters is correct. So notice when you go from a small unit to a larger unit, your number gets smaller. Next week, I'm going to give you guys a video and an activity that kind of helps you understand why you would use some units compared to others, okay? So what I want you guys to do, for those of you that were able to open the lab notebook and you were able to access this document, I want you to go ahead and keep working through this. So remember, in your lab notebook, what I should be seeing you submit, you should have already done your pod because I gave you time in class to do that. You have access to the PowerPoint. Go in and just answer those questions, or excuse me, the vocabulary terms in your own notebook in your own words for those terms. Then I want you guys to practice on this metric conversion sheet. I will come back to this next week. So we'll spend a couple minutes next week going over this, okay? Again, I know students think this is boring, but I'm telling you, if you want to actually do chemistry in a chemistry lab, you have to be able to make measurements. You have to be able to do conversions to make sure you have the right volume of material, okay? So if you are done or you have been able to access the material, you can exit the WebEx and you can go in and you can complete the assignment in your lab notebook. So again, your pod, question, the vocabulary terms, there's also the metric system video if you would like to watch that for a little bit of help, and then you can work on the document, okay? And if you start struggling with the conversions, that's okay, because we're gonna come back to this on Monday, okay? So the rest of today is gonna be independent work, and if you're not sure of what all is assigned, remember, go back to the daily folder and you can view that, all right? So if you guys don't have any more questions, and if you were able to access the notebook and the document, you guys can go ahead and sign out of WebEx and keep working on your independent assignments. Otherwise, stay in the chat with me. All right, so for the rest of you guys who don't need any more help, have a great day, and I will see you next week.